This episode of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast is brought to you by Legacy Staffs, which are crafted by the Brazos Walking Stick Company in Waco, Texas. You can go to brazosticks.com and use the name Mac Payne, one word, at the checkout and get 10% off your next order of the Legacy Staff or cane of your own design.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1820 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, regardless of their countries of origin, as told to you by yours truly, an American Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the wonderful way the great country of Australia treats its Vietnam veterans. Australia was a very valuable ally to the Americans and all the others who were fighting in Vietnam to help sustain the government of South Vietnam, trying to keep them out of the clutches of the communists in North Vietnam. Unfortunately, the communists in North Vietnam had a short-term victory when they took over South Vietnam 2 years after the signing of the Paris Peace Accords. They went in with their re-education program, put a lot of people in prison, killed a lot of people, changed the economy, and nearly starved to death the people in the southern part of that country. Luckily, they wised up and got rid of the unworkable communist economic system, and they're doing quite well on that. Unfortunately, they have retained some of the police state policies encouraged by communism. The Australians went to Vietnam, fought alongside the Americans, the South Koreans, the South Vietnamese, the Thai military, and did a great job up there. Speaking as an American Vietnam veteran, I will always be grateful to the nation of Australia for them stepping in to give us a hand up there in that Vietnam War. Down in Australia, August the 18th is a special day because that is the day they have designated as Vietnam Veterans Day. It marks the anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan. Long Tan was the biggest battle the Australians participated in during that war. It's been mentioned in 7 previous episodes of this podcast. I advise you to go and listen to some of those previous episodes because they give some very interesting background on this battle. To take a look at those previous episodes about the Battle of Long Tan, all you've got to do is go to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Look over on the right-hand side, and you'll see my smiling face. Right above that picture of me and my smiling face, you will see a search box. All you've got to do is type in Long Tan, hit the search symbol, and they'll pop right up, and you can read all of them. It is a very inspiring battle, especially if you're looking at it from the Australian side. Briefly, a quick recap of that battle was this. Down at the Long Tan rubber plantation, not far from Vung Tau, 2,000 unfortunate NVA soldiers ran into 100 ANZAC troops. And you can guess the outcome. The odds were just about right. 100 ANZAC soldiers against 2,000 NVA. Naturally, the ANZAC prevailed. They won the battle. I can't think of a more deserving event in that war to use as a day to commemorate your Vietnam veterans because they did such a tremendous thing up there in that rubber plantation. Recently, there was a story about how Australia honors and takes care of its Vietnam veterans. I'm going to share that story with you because I believe it presents an excellent example of how to take care of your Vietnam veterans, whatever country you're from. This story was titled, Recognizing Australia's Vietnam Veterans. It appeared on the Transcontinental website. That is the online service of the Transcontinental newspaper right there in Port Augusta, South Australia. If you don't know exactly where Port Augusta is located, if you went on an R&R down to Sydney like I did, then you know where Sydney is. Port Augusta is 900 miles due west of Sydney. Now that you know where it is, I'm going to share this article with you. It was submitted by none other than Darren Chester. He is the Australian Minister for Veterans Affairs and also the Minister for Defense Personnel. It is a wonderful story that tells how Vietnam veterans should be treated. Let's take a look at it. Dateline, Port Augusta, South Australia. Each year on August the 18th, Veterans Day and the anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan, Australians pause to reflect on the service and sacrifice of those who served during the Vietnam War. The first Australian troops from the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam arrived in 1962, and over the course of the war, around 60,000 Australians served there, with our involvement ending with the Royal Australian Air Force flying humanitarian missions and evacuating embassy staff in April of 1975. Tragically, 521 Australians died and more than 3,000 were wounded. On August the 18th, 1966, Australian soldiers fought in one of their fiercest battles during the entire Vietnam War, the Battle of Long Tan, a brutal action that saw 18 Australians killed and 25 wounded. As we commemorate the service and sacrifice of those who served and died in Vietnam, it is important to acknowledge that many Vietnam veterans were deeply affected by their service. Vietnam veterans were instrumental in establishing the Vietnam Veterans Counseling Service, now known as Open Arms. The service has been providing mental health and support services for Australian veterans and their families every year since 1982 and is their enduring legacy. All Vietnam veterans can be proud that Open Arms supported more than 30,000 veterans and their family members last year, and that it has made a life-changing difference to countless veterans and their families, and I know it will continue to do so into the future. Vietnam veterans also set up the Long Tan Bursary. That is a program that provides education support to the children and grandchildren of Vietnam veterans, helping them gain the skills and qualifications needed to pursue their chosen career. Applications for the 2021 bursary open today, and eligible descendants of our Vietnam veterans can apply online at avcat.org.au/scholarships. Don't worry about trying to write down that online address. It will be on the show notes for this podcast episode number 1820. Continuing with Darren Chester's comments. He closes with this: as a nation, I encourage all Australians to acknowledge and honor the Vietnam veterans who gave so much in the service of our country, as well as recognize the rich contribution Vietnam veterans continue to make to our community. Lest we forget. Signed, Darren Chester, Minister for Veterans Affairs and also Minister for Defense Personnel. That is a wonderful thing they are doing for their Vietnam veterans down there in Australia. This Open Arms program is also a wonderful thing that they do, and it was started by Vietnam veterans. There will also be a link to the Open Arms and Long Tan Bursary on the podcast show notes. Again, as an American Vietnam veteran, I greatly appreciate what the Australians are doing to recognize and honor their Vietnam veterans. I take this opportunity to issue an official Vietnam Veteran News podcast salute to the country of Australia and its Vietnam veterans. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1820 of the Vietnam Veteran News podcast. Thank you so much for coming to listen to these stories. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?